Chapter 7. Borrowed Desire and the Mimetic Self. Most people experience their desires as deeply personal. I want this. I chose this. This is who I am. And certainly some desires do emerge from genuine temperament, curiosity, values, or intrinsic orientation. Human beings are not empty vessels mechanically programmed by external forces. Individuality exists. Authentic preference exists. Personal agency exists. But once we begin observing human behavior carefully, another uncomfortable reality gradually appears. Much of what human beings desire is socially shaped long before it is consciously examined. People learn not only what to think from one another, they learn what to want. This insight sits near the center of mimetic theory. The idea that human desire is often imitative rather than entirely self-generated. We do not simply desire objects, achievements, identities, lifestyles, relationships, or status markers in isolation. We learn what appears desirable by watching what other people appear to value. Desire spreads socially. A child sees what receives admiration. An adolescent notices what increases status. Adults absorb signals about success, beauty, prestige, luxury, attractiveness, morality, sophistication, or fulfillment from peers, media environments, institutions, and culture itself. Over time, desire becomes synchronized. Entire populations begin chasing similar ambitions while experiencing those ambitions as individually chosen. This process is often subtle enough to remain invisible. A person may pursue wealth believing they independently value wealth, while much of the emotional intensity around wealth may actually reflect status, admiration, comparison, fear of exclusion, or inherited cultural conditioning. Another may pursue intellectual sophistication, moral purity, spiritual enlightenment, career prestige, aesthetic refinement, or political virtue, partly because those forms of identity are socially rewarded within the tribes most emotionally important to them. The specific object of desire changes across groups. The underlying mechanism often remains surprisingly similar. Human beings desire partly through models. We watch others to determine what appears meaningful. And because human beings are deeply social creatures, this process begins early. Children quickly learn which behaviors generate approval. Adolescents become exquisitely sensitive to social ranking and group norms. Adults continue absorbing cues constantly, often without awareness. Entire industries exist primarily to manipulate mimetic desire. Advertising, influencer culture, luxury branding, prestige signaling, social media ecosystems, political identity marketing, and status-driven consumption all rely heavily on the fact that human beings imitate one another emotionally long before they consciously analyze why. Social comparison becomes woven into perception itself. People begin measuring themselves against surrounding models: attractiveness, success, wealth, virtue, productivity, popularity, influence, lifestyle, morality, intelligence, happiness. And because comparison is psychologically endless, mimetic desire often produces chronic dissatisfaction. The desired object frequently matters less than the emotional positioning attached to it. This is one reason achieving long-sought goals sometimes produces less fulfillment than expected. A person may spend years pursuing something without fully realizing that part of the pursuit was socially mediated rather than intrinsically rooted. Once attained, the emotional satisfaction fades quickly because the underlying mechanism was comparative rather than deeply self-authored. The target shifts, another comparison emerges, another desire appears. Modern digital environments intensify this process dramatically. Human beings are now exposed continuously to curated displays of other people's success, beauty, relationships, status, experiences, moral positioning, lifestyle performance, and identity signaling. The nervous system absorbs these signals whether people consciously intend it or not. And because human beings naturally imitate emotionally salient models, desires can spread rapidly through populations without individuals fully noticing the degree to which they are borrowing orientation from the surrounding environment. This is one reason modern life can produce such strange psychological fragmentation. People often pursue lives they never consciously chose, careers inherited from status structures, relationships shaped by fantasy narratives, consumption patterns driven by comparison, political identities shaped by tribe, moral postures shaped by social reward, life goals absorbed from surrounding models rather than discovered through deeper examination. And because these desires feel emotionally real, people often defend them intensely. Again, this does not make desire itself illegitimate. The goal is not to become emotionally detached from wanting altogether. Desire animates life. Curiosity, love, creation, ambition, beauty, exploration, mastery, intimacy, and meaning all involve forms of desire. Human beings without desire become psychologically diminished. The deeper question is, whose desire is operating? Or perhaps more accurately, how much of this desire was consciously examined before it became integrated into identity? This question can become profoundly unsettling because it destabilizes the comforting sense of complete individuality. People like to imagine themselves as self-originating beings, pursuing authentically chosen goals. But much of what feels deeply personal may partly reflect social imitation operating beneath awareness. The examined life therefore requires learning how to observe desire itself. Where did this wanting come from? What emotional reward does it promise? Would I still value this if nobody admired it? If nobody envied it? If nobody validated it? If it brought no status? Would this still matter to me in private? These questions are not easy because socially reinforced desire often becomes intertwined with identity itself. A person may spend years pursuing goals inherited from tribe, culture, family systems, prestige hierarchies, or comparison structures without ever pausing long enough to ask whether the pursuit genuinely aligns with their deeper values or temperament. This is partly why modern people can become externally successful while internally disoriented. Achievement without examined desire often produces strange emptiness. The person reaches the destination only to discover the map was borrowed. This realization sits near the boundary between the possessed mind and the examined one. Because once a person begins noticing the social shaping of desire, something important becomes possible. The distinction between externally conditioned wanting and internally aligned valuing. That distinction may sit near the center of self-possession. An autotelic life, a life organized increasingly around intrinsic meaning rather than external reward, does not eliminate social influence entirely. No human being fully escapes mimetic processes. We learn from one another constantly. We borrow inspiration, values, goals, language, and aspirations throughout life. But awareness changes the relationship. The person begins noticing. When desire is driven primarily by comparison, when status is masquerading as meaning, when belonging is shaping ambition, when resentment is shaping aspiration, when imitation is being mistaken for individuality, when admiration is silently directing attention, when external validation is governing the sense of self. This awareness does not remove human sociality, but it introduces the possibility of more conscious authorship. And perhaps that is one of the most difficult tasks in modern life. Learning how to participate in culture without allowing culture to completely dictate what feels worth wanting.